Hey everybody, happy Tuesday afternoon. This is March 25th, 2025. We are across the pitch. We have the three amigos back together again. In what feels like forever since the three of us have been on camera together. But we have a exciting show for you guys today as we have Alex Windley rejoin us for what I feel like is the fifth time now. She covers Inter Miami and as well as expanding now to New York coverage as well. So we're going to learn about her background and see what she has to say regarding Miami. But Alex, first of all, how are you doing today? And tell us a little bit about what you've been doing this season.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so the season's been pretty crazy for me. Alongside covering Inter Miami, I've started interning for AM New York and Schneps Media, covering some NYCFC football up there. It's been super great. The team's been up and down, but they're getting a little bit more consistent. They have a new head coach in Pascal Janssen, who's trying to steer the team in a better direction to improve upon what they did last season. And yeah, so far it's been really good for them. They drew the Crew last week, which is a really good result for them. And yeah, alongside that, like I said, covering Inter Miami still, Messi's injury woes, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a busy time for me.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we're here to discuss Miami and the Union as they have an upcoming match this weekend. For us in Chester, we've had a very surprising start to the season. We have we have been 12 points in the first 5 games, which is, if you ask any Union fan is pretty much much different than what we expected so far. For how about you guys from Miami? Is this the start of the season that you're looking for? I mean, I know you mentioned my Messi's injury as well. How have the fans and the players reacted to the first few weeks?
Yeah, I think it's kind of part of the course. Besides that result against New York City FC, where they got Miami got a player sent off early, and they were playing down a player for I think 80 minutes. So I think if that wouldn't have happened, Miami could have pushed for the win, but it was a competitive game nonetheless. But yeah, so far it's been I wouldn't say I'd say maybe surprising a little bit considering the losses that the team has had with Leo Campana going to the Revs, Matias Rojas leaving, Diego Gomez going over to Brighton. I think people did expect Miami to kind of drop back a little bit offensively. And in my opinion, I think they have a little bit. I don't think they will score as many goals as they did last season, but I think this year they've under Javier Mascherano, I think they've been able to be a little bit more defensively sound. I believe they brought in guys like Gonzalo Lujan, Maxi Falcon, which has shored up the defense a lot. And then you have youngsters like Noah Allen, Ian Frey, who are fit and healthy that have been really huge for the back line and been able to kind of strengthen that as well. And then you bring in guys like Segovia and Tadeo Yande, who are workhorses and contribute that too. So while yes, Miami are better, maybe not won't score as much. They're better defensively, and I think as the season progresses, we'll see that. And I want to shout out that one match they had against Charlotte where they went down a man again, which is a concerning trend for the team, but they were able to play like 60 minutes down a man and still keep a clean sheet, which is a testament to, I think, the coaching that Mascherano has done. So as far as expectations, I think it's part of the same, but I think offensively people thought the team would take a step back, but I think they've been doing pretty well so far with the schedule and all. But let's see this weekend against a really good Union side. Let's see how they'll fare without Messi and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, Jose. I'll pass to you for the questions we have lined up for Alex.
Yeah, Alex. Again, we spoke off air, but I can't thank you enough for for joining, and frankly, just continue to be so impressed by your work. Having known you now for 2-3 years, it feels like with all the crossover, and even to the point we're in a texting relationship in a way. But I wanted to ask you sort of I think the big question, right, immediately looking at the roster, there is definitely a world where Lionel Messi decides not to come back next year, right? Where there is a world where he decides not to put ink to paper. And he's not the only one who would be out of contract after 2025. Alba, Busquets, Ustari, Cello, Frey, Sailor, Martinez, Allende, Calendar, all of these players have their contracts through 2025. My question, I guess, for you, and I know it's a big one to hit off the bat, but does a lot of that hinge on the little guy signing, or is there a world where he disappears and some of those faces remain? Because this is also a roster that has 13 international spots versus the 7 that the Union scrap for every single year.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that on Messi's front, I think that talking with or speaking to Jorge Mas, he did double down on Miami's intention to re-sign Messi for 2026. I know with his injuries, people are questioning whether his body can hold up at this point, but I think Mas is pushing for that. I think, despite there have been some loose reports from Spain saying that Barca every year there's a Barca rumor that he'll return, but I think Messi, I think he said Miami will be his last team. Like you said, it remains to be seen if he will resign. But I think if I were to bet, and I'm not a betting person, I'd say that he would resign with Inter Miami come 2026. They've got the new stadium going up, and it's going up pretty quickly, considering Florida construction, everything perpetually getting built. So the new stadium's coming up. They move in there with Messi, and if Messi resigns, I don't see why Busquets and Alba might. Suarez is a different deal. He's 38, 39 going into 2026. So will Miami want to take another year on a nearly 40-year-old Luis Suarez? I mean, yes, he's scoring, but you have guys like Alan Obanda, who is a youngster coming here on loan, who will probably soak up a lot of his Suarez's minutes. So let's see. But yeah, in the case that Messi doesn't resign, I think that as far as the homegrowns go, naturally they'll resign and stay with Inter Miami as long as they can. Ian Frey specifically, I know he's super talented, but with his injury history, teams may be a little bit hesitant to maybe bring him into the team. But with him staying at Inter Miami, where he's born and raised, comfortable, I think he'll be able to resign. Drake, all those names that you shouted out. He I don't even know if he's the starter for Miami, considering Oscar Ustari has taken over that. But as far as the rest of the names go, I think it really depends on, like you said, Messi resigning, how the team wants to structure itself heading into the new stadium, and the cap situation for Miami is very it's precarious in the sense that you have your 3 DPs. You can't. There's not a lot of wiggle room for adding huge additions. So yeah, it all depends on Messi resigning. I think that if he does, and all those guys will want to come back. But if he doesn't, I think Miami's front office will have to kind of reconfigure the roster a little bit and see how they can continue to improve.
It's funny you mentioned Jorge Mas doubling down on wanting to sign Messi, which is all well and good. I'm doubling down on signing my marriage with Ana de Armas or Sweeney. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So
no Margot Robbie.
No, it's okay. But it's really interesting to see this franchise hinge on really the decision on one player, and it's a dangerous game, especially when then you look forward to 2026 in terms of Gressel as well as Avila's being the next ones to maybe be done after 2026. So that's a roster that I feel, Alex, should Messi not sign, you're probably looking at a reset like they had to with the fines from MLS when there were those issues with the French, whose name's escaping me right now.
Blaise Matuidi.
Yeah, Matuidi. I just remember him having the French flag dyed on his hair, basically, that one year. But with Blaise Matuidi and all the issues that they had to reconfigure everything to line themselves up. Hence why the Union ended up getting Julian Carranza for pennies on the dollar during that reset that they had to go through. So it's a team that I think it's built to win now and has already won some things, but I worry. To me, it's really a huge gamble.
I was going to say, quickly regarding the Messi front, do you sort of feel like the indication is that he probably will re-sign purely because the 2026 World Cup is next year? I presume that will be Messi sort of last around the international stage. And it sort of feels like, as well, from an American perspective, he probably will be the main advert for the World Cup one. That'll be the guy that they sort of put, well, they have already, but the US Federation will put front and center as opposed to the national team as to why you should come watch the World Cup.
Yeah, on the national team front, man, the Nations League debacle has been crazy. But regarding your point about Messi, I think, like you said, Moss is pushing for it hard. He's mentioned it several times, the intent to re-sign Messi. I think he said specifically heading into 2026, Messi will be the number 10 for this team. And honestly, I haven't heard anything that would suggest otherwise. Like I said earlier, the Barca rumors are always going to come up, but Messi said he's comfortable here. Him and his family are here. His Barca boys are here. There's no reason for him to leave. He has a stake in the team once he retires, whenever that may be. So he has his, a reason to stay in Miami and be in Miami proper. So yeah, like Jose said, it is dangerous to hinge the entire roster on Messi's situation, which I think a lot of Inter Miami journalists we discussed this a lot. Like, if Messi does not resign, like what's going to happen next year? And like you said, it is a roster that is intended to win now, and I think that's what they're going for. Javier Mascherano even said as much. His job is to win trophies, whether it's MLS Cup or CONCACAF Champions Cup, which I think they're in the quarterfinals against LAFC in like 2 weeks. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's win now mode for Miami, regardless if Messi resigns. And I think I've thought about this a lot. Like, if Miami were to win an MLS Cup this year, will Messi retire or just not resign? Like, because his goal is essentially made. I don't know. Remains to be seen. I don't think the team definitely doesn't want another early playoff exit. But yeah, I do have some concerns with them hinging it all on Messi. Of course, you want him to resign, but like at the end of the day, MLS success is built on lasting, cohesive rosters and having Messi resign or not. And then you have all these guys taking pay cuts essentially to, like, the first 2 years Alba was here. He was a TAM player. Now he's a DP. He was taking a pay cut just to sign to play alongside Messi again. So yeah, it's like a carefully crafted web of capology right now with the team. And, if Messi leaves, the web gets wiped out. So yeah, let's see how it goes when we'll talk again at the end of the year, see what happens. But yeah, it's a crazy situation.
Well, I mean, I feel like I asked you this last year as well. Like, what is the expectation, or what would be considered a successful season for Miami? And I feel like it's the same answer again this year. You have to win some sort of hardware. And anyway, you kind of brought up really briefly as you were talking about the CONCACAF Champions Cup right now. They have LAFC coming up. I believe it's on April 2nd. I'm looking at the calendar real quick. Wednesday, April 2nd. And then we have the Union versus Miami game this Saturday on the 29th. Now, as Union fans, we have known that the Philly boys in blue have been in this tournament for year after year, and it always feels like it's just such a congested schedule with CONCACAF and MLS play. How do you feel like your team has handled it so far, and how do you expect them to handle this coming Saturday, considering now you're further along the tournament? You obviously want to make a deep run of a tournament you probably could win as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that with this currently constructed roster, they've brought in a lot of youth around these older Barca 4, like, Baltazar Rodriguez out of Racing, Telesco Segovia, I mentioned earlier, Venezuelan international who's, got a high ceiling, Maxi Falcon, Lujan, Tadeo Yande, Fafo Picol, ex-Union player who I don't know if I can say this as a journalist, but he's such a nice guy. Like, I love him. Like, he's such a Miami guy. He was born in New York, but he was raised in Miami. But like, yeah, he's one of the poster boys of the club now. I think the club's been pushing him as one of the top players of face of the team. But like, yeah, their depth wise, I think they've gotten better since last year. I think Miami's big downfall during the playoffs was when Yannick Brighton Busquets was out during that Atlanta series, and it showed. Midfield wise, Miami were just cut open through by Atlanta, and they had no answer with Brighton and Busquets out. But now with, like I said, Rodriguez coming in, Segovia, Federico Redondo maybe taking a step up. They've got depth in almost every area of the pitch now, and I think they've improved in that regard. And like you said, I think Mascherano, they are going to try to go for CONCACAF Champions Cup. I think they've got a pretty good run to at least the semifinals without facing a Mexican side, which is more than what happened last year where they faced Monterrey and got beat pretty heavily. But yeah, I think this season, I think they've got a pretty good bracket, and let's see if they can beat LAFC. And then, who knows from there. I think they're going to push to win it, and I think that would be a good starting point for the team if they're able to win a trophy early compared to, say, the MLS Cup. But yeah, like he said, I think Champions Cup, MLS Cup is definitely the goal. I know there are a lot of Messi fans saying, what about the Club World Cup? No MLS team with the roster rules right now, it's not feasible for even the Sounders. I don't think it's feasible for them. But so that's a wash. But like, yeah, Champions Cup and MLS Cup is definitely the main goals for the team this year. And maybe supporters should, I don't know, but I don't think they're banking on that either.
Having just been in Seattle for 5 days, Alex, and been to a game and done the press tour type of thing, I can tell you that the local press do not believe that Seattle's going to win the Club World Cup, so I can confirm that. It's really funny, especially when their biggest acquisition just tore his ACL and is out. So Paul Arriola being that. I wanted to maybe shift the wheels a little bit, Alex and Dave and Mike. Please feel free to rein it back in if you want to the topics you're interested. But I'm really intrigued on your front, Alex, in terms of what have been the changes in terms of your coverage with a new coach, right? It's something that Philadelphia is experiencing, going from Jim Curtin, a guy who understood the landscape. I'm not saying that Bradley Cornell doesn't, but Jim grew up here, lived here, has been here, or had been here for the longest time, and understood that the Union were the fifth out of 5 teams, or sometimes you would even argue the 6th out of 4 teams in terms of importance across the city. So for me, it has been really interesting to see the way that Cornell has operated and sliced and diced this media aspect or scene. But I'm intrigued for you going from Tata Martino to Javier Mascherano, who probably some questions were raised when the appointment was made, right? Because Javier Mascherano hasn't really done a whole lot of great things with the youth side of Argentina. If anything, probably a bit of disappointment over the years with the youth side. And I could be wrong and maybe talking out my butt, but I don't believe that they didn't win gold last year for the Olympics, did they?
No.
Okay. So again, with a very strong Argentina side, to barely have made it into the tournament during the Preolímpico, to then not winning it, which is obviously always the intention for that nation. How different have the two been in terms of coverage for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say right now, Mascherano, it's crazy to say, but I think, he's a millennial. So I think he's only 40 years old. So naturally, millennial versus Tata being maybe a baby boomer is that's the difference there. Mascherano is very candid. He's very blunt. He won't really mince words. Like I know, for example, the Messi injury. There were times where he was trying to be coy, but at the end of the day, he just straight up told the media, yeah, Messi is carrying a bit of a knock. Eventually, the team came out and said it. He had an injury. Last year that wouldn't have happened. Tata would have not said anything. He would have said a lot of words, but a whole lot of nothing. And the team wouldn't have confirmed anything, which for us media people being spammed with a lot of Messi fans who are, for the most part, for me, they're really respectful. They just want to know if Messi's fit. Last year it was really hell for them because the team just didn't give us a clear answer. But this year we were able to, the team said, yeah, Messi's carrying a knock. It's what's like a groin, thigh injury he's dealing with. And they were very candid about that. But yeah, Mascherano, he's been really open so far. Unfortunately, due to my busy schedule, I have not been able to make a pre-match conference in the mornings because they hold them at like 9 a.m. and I have crazy meetings throughout the day because of my internship. But yeah, he's been super, super great, super candid. A lot of the quotes have been really great, really understanding the team. I specifically remember against the Dynamo after Ian Frey got sent off. The guy was like, yeah, I'll protect my players. And the specific quote was, I'll kill for them. But I didn't want to quote that specifically because it's a little bit harsh. So I said, I re-quoted it. So it's a little bit more palatable. He said that, I'd go to war for my players, which is, look, I don't know if Tata would have gone that far, but, Mascherano, he's a passionate guy and he'll back these players 100%. So I think that's the main difference between Tata and Masche. Masche is super passionate. He's celebrating like he's on the field himself every time there's a goal. With Tata, he's a little bit more, Grandpa Tata. You go for concerns, but not necessarily to talk about, I don't know, your marriage problems. I guess I don't know. You go to your best friend. I don't know, but like with Mascherano, it's different. He's really candid. He'll give you good quotes, and there is a difference even on the field. It's like. The guys are playing for a colleague instead of like an older father figure. So I do think there's a difference. The young players absolutely love Mascherano, like you said, Jose, about with his youth coaching. Kramaschke, David Ruiz, Frey, Noah Allen, they've all spoken out. Even guys like Tadeo Yande, who's I think 24. So, but like they've all spoken out about how he's taken them under his wing and improved them. Mascherano was a defensive player, as a midfielder defender. So the defensive side has definitely grown with guys like Ian Frey and all that good stuff. So yeah, Mosque, I think, yes, there were some doubts at the beginning, but right now I think he's been flexible, adaptable tactically. That's not something Tata would have done. He would have been really stubborn and not put guys were in positions to succeed. He would have stuck with the back five, and I don't know. But like with Mosque, I think it's been really refreshing. Younger coach. It reflects the vibe of the team in terms of the non-Barca players. But yeah, it's been good so far, and let's see if he can continue.
I apologize to my co-host to dominate the conversation, but you've sort of given me a perfect jump to the next question, which is, Alex, you have been the perfect example who has seen this franchise from PM, and then we'll see what it looks like after pre-Messi and post-Messi in terms of what this team has looked like. I'm intrigued to hear from you, and it's up to you whether it's positive or negative in terms of the evolution of covering this team. You've seen it prior to Messi and some of these really interesting names that no one could have imagined this club getting, in a way, to now seeing them on a weekly basis. But that also, I'm sure, brings difficulties. I'd be intrigued to hear how it's progressed, whether it's positive or negative in terms of your coverage, because we've heard and I've seen firsthand from friends and colleagues who are trying to go as away coverage, but get denied the ability to come in, despite having just as good credentials as mine. So it's really interesting to see how that works out. But I'd love to hear from you on that aspect, how it's changed.
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand. I've been, like you said, I've been covering the team since the beginning. Like it's the change has been absolutely crazy. Like back then, I was able to, I was still, up and coming, writer, still finding my footing in terms of that, and the credentials were pretty easy to to apply for, and they were just looking for anybody to cover the team because it was a new side, and the Miami sports scene. It's very Dolphins, Heat. I wouldn't mention the Marlins, but they're notoriously terrible. But it's very, it's a basketball.
They're bad.
Yeah, man, that's a whole nother conversation. How the Marlins inadvertently affected Inter Miami getting their stadium because of the debacle with their stadium. Anyway, but so Miami's a Dolphins basketball town, and so Miami just wanted coverage wherever they can get it. So I was able to apply pretty quickly, and I had a good portfolio under my belt, so I guess that helped too. But post Messi, it was, I would say it was a bit of a challenge. There were a couple times that me and a few local journalists didn't maybe, there was one instance where a colleague of mine applied and wasn't able to get in because there's so many, international media covering Messi's first game and all that good stuff. And unfortunately, they just, didn't have room. The press box is pretty small, so it just got, there was no room. But as it's gotten better since 2023, 24, 25 now, I think it's calmed down a bit. Credentials are pretty easy to apply for. They have I don't know what system the union uses, but Miami have a security safe system where you apply to each game, you tick off and they approve it or not. But it's been night and day, I will say, for people wanting to cover Inter Miami as a team. It is difficult for them to get credentials now. But for me, I've been covering the team for a while, so I've been grandfathered in. But yeah, at the beginning, I could apply, and that's that. But now, for newbies, it is a little bit more difficult. But I'm fortunate that I built a relationship with the comms team, and they know me and my work pretty well. So it's been easy that way. But yeah, there, like you said, there has been a difference. I don't want to drag them, but for example, with my internship, I'm covering New York City FC, and they're more than happy to accommodate you with anything. They'll translate or if you want to pull a player for 20 minutes on a Zoom to talk about something, they'll be able to do it. But with Inter Miami, someone asks a question in Spanish, they'll maybe not translate it. And I'm trying to learn Spanish as best as I can, but it's still not fluent enough for me to get it live, I suppose. But with NYCFC, they'll translate it and make it easier for people covering the team, which is something Inter Miami maybe doesn't do that I would like them to see. But other than that, it has been crazy night and day since pre-Messi and now during Messi. It has been a change, but it took a while to get Inter Miami to the point where they are now, where it's a little bit more comfortable, I suppose.
Well, and what's the thing when you mentioned with the translation? One of the great perks of having Jose with us has been the Spanish translation, because especially with players like Jose Martinez and Jesus Bueno. I mean, I'm fluent in Spanish, but nowhere near as Jose's level. And having him being able to be like, yeah, I can ask these questions and I can feel comfortable talking. Not only was that great for the players, right, to have that person who they can speak to, but you're still growing a fairly young league, compared to baseball or NFL or anything like that. It's important for fans to then feel also like, okay, I'm a Spanish speaking person. I don't know any lick of English, but they have these translations out of these players, for us as fans to absorb and kind of feel like we're actually part of the community, not just simply watching everything in English. So I think it's great that NYCFC is doing that, especially considering the demographic that they're in. And Miami is also in the same demographic, but for us in Chester, we feel like there is such a huge Spanish community that is not really being tapped into in terms of a fan base. Majority of the fans that are going to these games are not Hispanic fans, and we see it. Jose, you and I seen it when Mazatlan or Cruz Azul walk into the Super Park. That place is absolutely bumping, and is a vast difference between cultures. But just kind of go towards the game that's coming up this weekend. Dave, I'll kind of shoot to you first. A lot of this conversation today has been about the changes between either Miami's changes with coaching as well as us, Carnell, Curtin.
Yeah.
What are you thinking for this week with Miami? Because they have owned us pretty good these last 5 matches. What are you concerned about for this coming Saturday, or what are you looking forward to?
Well, I mean, I think we sort of addressed it at the top of the show, but I think the big thing is obviously no Messi. I don't think he's actually played at Subaru Park in the MLS. I think his only game was the Leagues Cup game, wasn't it? But who is the player that we should perhaps look out for to step into, fill Messi's boots on Saturday night? Because obviously, again, without Messi, Suarez will step up, Busquets, Alba. But who's the guy that who will probably take over from Messi on that right hand side of the attacking 3 or attacking 4?
Well, I'll say today Oyande, the youngster from Celta Vigo. He's on loan. He's been super great. He's provided that pace over the top that Miami was, desperately missing even last season. Yeah, there was Diego Gomez who would make runs in behind, but Oyande is more of an attack-minded player. He can play as a forward, play as a winger, so he'll probably line up on that right-hand side if Messi can't go. But I will say Oyande he wasn't at practice this morning, so I'm not sure what is up with him. I think on Instagram he was at Disney World with his partner, so I maybe he's still there. I don't know, but yeah, let's see. But yeah, Yande would be the player that I would circle for Union fans. I think he's he's on loan, but maybe if like the earlier conversation and Messi resigns, maybe he'll make a deal to stay here permanently. I don't know, but yeah, Yande is super quick, physical. He's scored multiple goals already. So I think that's a big worry for the Union if he does play. Number 2, I'll say Fafa Picol because he obviously Union fans are well with him. But yeah, if Yande's not there, I think Fafa will probably start there. You know what you're going to get with Fafa: experience, speed, just good instinctual play in the final third. And I think he'll line up at right wing if Messi. I don't think Messi, but if Messi can't go.
Then just a second point as well. Obviously, with the CONCACAF Champions Cup or Champions League game, whatever the competition is now called, on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, can we perhaps expect some squad rotation maybe? Because I remember like the days when the Union were going deep into the competition, we'd see a full strength starting 11 in MLS play, a full strength starting 11. 4 days later, and then 3 days later again on the Saturday, they play a full strength team. Do you sort of expect Mascherano, especially with a team of LAFC's caliber in comparison to, no disrespect to Cavalier or Sporting Kansas City, do you somewhat expect Mascherano to perhaps take that a little bit more seriously than MLS play, sort of knowing how sort of similar to the NBA or sort of similar to the NBA where it's just getting into the tournament, into the playoffs, where perhaps he'd be willing to sacrifice a couple of MLS games here or there to try and win a Continental Cup?
Yeah, I think we will see some rotation. I think we mentioned this earlier, but Champions Cup is a feasible tournament that Miami could win. So I think Mashke will try to rotate as much as possible. I believe he did so a couple of games back when I think it was against Houston where it was pretty heavily rotated before the Cavalier matches. So yes, he will be rotating. It remains to be seen who's available to be able to be rotated. But yeah, Messi, I don't think he'll be playing against the Union this weekend. I don't know. Let's see how he trains as the week goes on. But yeah, I don't think he'll probably play in against the Union. But I think it will be his goal will be to play against LAFC ultimately. So yeah, there will be some rotation. I'm not sure who will be back from international duty, who's fully fit, but based off of training because it was pretty limited. But yeah, I think there will be some rotation. I don't think Messi will play, but I don't think it will be heavily rotated. But I think some guys that normally don't start will probably get some minutes and against the Union, and then Moscow will probably rotate against LAFC for a fuller strength squad against them.
Just out of curiosity, how many players were you missing for international duty this window?
Yeah, so it was Noah Allen for the Greek U21s, which is a cool switch for him. David Ruiz for Honduras, but he was injured, so he was out. Santi Morales, who's an 18-year-old academy player, and I believe that was it. Yeah, so it was just a couple of youngsters, and Telesco Segovia for Venezuela. So yes, yeah, just the youngsters were out, and
Wow.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
We had a very, very heavy rotation in terms of we had 7 players out on international duty this past weekend, and then we had 2 players out. Was it? I'm trying to think the name right. Makanya was out for suspension, and we had a 9th player out. Jose, maybe you can remind me right now who the 9th player was. But we just were missing so many players, and we had such a heavily rotated squad. So, and we had that same problem last year. We basically had the entire Union 2 out there playing against Portland one of these weeks. So, it seems like you didn't have too much of an impact with the international duty kind of being thrown at you. For us, it feels like it hits us every single year, and it just okay. How can we survive this stretch of these 3 or 4 games that they could be missing? But you mentioned Fafa Pico. I feel like all of our Union listeners want to hear more about him. I feel like, Dave, you and I have said this for the last 3 years. Hey, if we can bring in Fafa and his speed, can we please get him on this squad again? You mentioned how he's basically fit in pretty comfortably. Do you feel like he is just going to be a fit for you guys moving forward in terms of how much talent he can bring as a regular sub? Do you think he's going to break into starting rotation on a consistent basis? What do you think his projection should be by the end of the year?
Well, pre-injury, he got injured a while back against New York City FC opening day, actually. So he was out for all that time until he came back against Atlanta and scored the winner. But yeah, I think if right now, I think he's a guy who can break into the starting 11. But right now, Mascherano seems to be wanting to go with this 4-4-2 with 2 midfielders as the wingers, so they could tuck inside and kind of make up numbers in the middle. But against certain teams, maybe he'll go with a winger, and if he does go with a winger, it'll either be Ayande, Robert Taylor, or Fafa Picoult. But yeah, I'm a huge Fafa fan. I think he's a nice guy, super great player, and I'm rooting for him to break into the starting 11. But yeah, I think it just depends on the team. Really, if they need speed over the top, it's Picoult and Ayande. If they need numbers through the middle, it's Segovia or incoming signing Baltazar Rodriguez or Benha Kamashki or David Ruiz making up numbers through there. So yeah, I think it all depends, but I'd like for Fafo to break in. I think right now he's kind of like if anything, he'll probably start against the Union this weekend too, just based off of how everything's going. But yeah, I think he's kind of a rotational. I wouldn't say it's quite a squad player like I don't know, like a Ryan Saylor who doesn't really get minutes, but he's a on the cusp type of guy who can become a starter if he's consistent enough. But right now, I think Moscow has a set starting 11, but Fafa is probably one of the first names coming off the bench if they need some goals or some speed over the top.
Yeah, I think this year for us as Union fans, it's odd that we have so much depth. I think it's probably the deepest team we've had in quite some time. I mean, Jose or Dave, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it's as you just saying, who's going to crack the starting 11? We have probably, a few players. We're like, okay, they could probably make a few starts here. How is Carnell going to rotate them? And I think so far he's done a pretty good job considering some of these players are still coming off injury, like Nathan Harriel, Glavinovic, kind of getting accustomed to these new players and just getting back into form. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Carnell attacks them this weekend, considering the competition depth that we currently have. Jose, any thoughts on this upcoming match or any questions we may have left out for Alex here?
Yeah, for me, it was sort of an aside in a way with Philadelphia being I think incredibly proud and something to boast, and continue to speak about the way that they develop talent, youth, etc. With having two Olympians on the roster. Miami was fortunate enough to have one, with Benja going as the youngest member of the U.S. 2024 Olympic squad. Wanted to sort of hear your thoughts on that, and how maybe the fan base treated that, because obviously, yeah, it was tiny bit detrimental since they were away for some of the league's cup last year, if I recall. But ultimately, an incredible honor, once in a lifetime type of thing. But just sort of wanted to hear how that was felt in Miami.
Yeah, I think Benghai is a local kid, and I think the fan base is super proud of him. Him, Ian Frey, David Ruiz, even now Santi Morales, who's only 18. A lot of these homegrowns have been, like the poster child of academies and MLS alongside the Union. I think that's Miami's goal, is to become the Union eventually in terms of turning out talent. I think they were super proud. It was fun covering him. I was doing some work for Bleacher Report for the U.S. Women's National Team, but I did catch the men's team as well, and it was super fun seeing him in limited minutes get some time on the field. I think he's grown as a player over the course of that time. I think maybe last year maybe his touches weren't as sharp, or maybe his physicality maybe wasn't up to par. But this season, I think in the minutes he has gotten, he's been looking really sharp, a lot better. He's been a lot more technical, physicality. He's a big kid for like 20 years old. This is crazy. But yeah, he's grown, and I think Miami's homegrowns have been like the pride of the team. I wouldn't say more so than signing Messi, but like seeing Frey, Noah Allen, Kromashki, Ruiz just get some time and to grow into regular starters with the team. It's been huge for Miami roster building wise, and to see them get international time with with Noah Allen in Greece now, and Kromashki. I think he was away with the youth team this international break, and I believe so, and so was Santiago Morales captaining the one of the youth sides. So seeing them just grow into being proper professionals and leading their countries as in the youth sides, it's been really cool to see, and they've all been phenomenal in terms of integrating with the squad and the older players, and they've learned a lot under Mascherano and the Barca 4. But I have one question for you guys. How do you guys feel about the Jack McGlynn trade from the Union to Houston? How did you guys feel about that? Speaking of homegrowns, I know I was shocked when that happened, but I was wondering if you guys could give me any feedback on how you felt, how McGlynn, if he wanted to move. I don't know, but
Dave, I'll let you answer that one first.
It was definitely blindsided by it. I don't think anyone. It just sort of came out of the blue. I thought, really, we were all preparing for a European move, or of something of that caliber, and have him just essentially go across division or across the league to Houston was definitely a shock. But I mean, in this early stage of the season, it's looking like a warranted move. No, I mean, in terms of the style of play and how the Union have done, it's looking like it's somewhat paid off at the moment. I think obviously Union are. In terms of their counter press and just their style of press this year, perhaps didn't suit the way that Jack McGlynn played. He was definitely, I think I called him last year a bit of a luxury player in the sense that, he's one of those players that if things were going really well and he had the time to get on the ball and do his own thing, it was great. But for the way that the Union were heading last year and the way they want to play this year, which is more robust in terms of, how, playing the high press, and they sort of play a 4 and then sort of, they sort of push their front 4 up to like lead the press, and you've got the two midfielders and beyond. I think Jack perhaps isn't mobile enough or physical enough to do what Lukic and Danley have done this year. So I think again it's looking justified, but at the same time it sort of seems that Houston is sort of a better fit for Jack in the way that the two teams play. So I think it's panned out great for both sides. But definitely at the time I was shocked and wasn't best pleased. But now it's looking like, especially with the Salon clause that they have got as well, it's looking like a good move for all parties.
I think the one thing that we had talked about on a show earlier this year was I had basically compared the three homegrowns. We have a bunch of homegrowns, but the big ones were Nathan Harriel, Jack McGlynn, and Quinn Sullivan. And I think talent-wise, overall ability, I thought Jack McGlynn is the best player of the three. But for the Union itself, I think Quinn Sullivan is the best fit for them. And then you guys know I'm the biggest Quinn Sullivan stan, have been for years now, and he just fits the high press, just run until you drop type of system. Like it just fits him perfectly. And we have seen him now this year on the left hand side alongside Kai Wagner. I think in every single game he's played so far, and he's really thrived. I think week in and week out, we know Lukic, Danley, Quinn Sullivan, Baribo. These are going players who are going to be there every single week. You know they're going to make a presence, their presence felt rather. So I think to Dave's point, yeah, we were all really surprised, but I think now that you're seeing how this team is playing out, it made a lot of sense for him to move, and I was just happy that Quinn could stay. Because not just for Kevin, because obviously Kevin's a big name here for us as he matures and goes to Man City in a couple of years, but just to see how he has grown as a player. Sullivan now taking corner kicks this year. He hadn't done that last year, so his game is evolving and he's getting better. Jose, any final thoughts on Mr. McGlynn, our
Yeah,
favorite Jack?
Yeah, I got outscooped by Mr. Mustache Man when that happened, and it happens. I was maybe like 5 minutes away from hitting post and waiting for one last text message, but it was interesting to see. I had known that he had changed agents maybe earlier that month, maybe like a week or two, joining what the hell's his name? Real Salt Lake guy, tattooed up, national team. What's his name? Diego Luna, had just joined his agency, and that typically signals that something's imminent because they felt like the previous agency wasn't doing much. But Jack McGlynn has a left foot that can sing, but doesn't have the dynamic movement that the Union need for the type of press that they do. I mean, it was pretty evident in a way with the way that his game against AGF in preseason out in Marbella, Spain went. It was very obvious that he just needed to sit during that game. He was basically just at the top of the center circle when they were attacking, trying to just ping balls left and right. And that's not where his role really is. He needs to be a little further up, moving the ball around in short passes and the occasional long one. All that to say that I wasn't too shocked, mainly from knowing that it was in the works, but also it was just so apparent that they needed somebody more dynamic. And I think that's where Jovan Lukic comes in, and maybe Jovan's more of a replacement for Jose Martinez, but ultimately somebody who is just immediately 5 times more dynamic and athletic per se. I'm really intrigued to see how Jack deals with the heat in Houston this summer. And I know that's such a minuscule thing, but that's a very serious thing out in that part of the country. But so far it has been a rough go out in Houston. So we'll see how he turns it around and how that team turns it around. I know they just actually bought, or in the, I'm not breaking anything. I think it's already out there, but Houston just bought the number 10 from Slavia Praha, who actually played against the Union in preseason. And that guy is a serious, very serious player. So I'm intrigued to see how they put him and Jack together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I for Alex, if you haven't watched much of the Union this year, Lukic is just like a controlled version of Jose Martinez in the sense that you're not going to get some sort of crazy maniac on the field. You're going to get a very dynamic player, very good on the ball defensively. He's already had 2 goals that are absolutely screamers in the back of the net. So he's just very, very, I won't say efficient player back there in front of that, and in front of that back four. And if you're a Miami fan looking to see who do I pay attention to this week, who am I worried about, I think Lukic has to be one of the players that you're going to see okay, he's active. He could score. He can recover defensively really well, especially with him and Danley, John Jocks together have been phenomenal. It seems like they've been playing together for years, and it's only been a handful of months, if that, probably less than that. So to Jose's point with Lukic, I think you never want to see a player of Jack McGlynn's caliber leave, but when you have such a seamless transition that we're seeing right now, it's like, okay, well, we're not terribly upset by it. Yeah, but go ahead, Jose or Dave. Do you want to add something to it? Okay. So, Alex, couple last questions here. With this match coming up, anything in particular that Union fans should be focused on in terms of Miami? Any sort of weaknesses that Miami has had so far? Do you think the Union team could exploit, especially with that high press that they have in their system?
Yeah, like you said, the high press. I know Miami's defense is a little bit better compared to last season, but like you saw, maybe if you watched the Atlanta game that Miami played, there were times where Atlanta were able to get on the end of crosses, and that's Miami's back line isn't the tallest when Thomas Avilas isn't playing. A lot of the guys are 6 foot or 5'10", but they're quite physical, but maybe not as tall. So yeah, that's the one thing that you should probably look out for if you want to score on Air Miami. I don't think it's more necessarily time in transition. I think Mascherano's been really strict about that. He's really strict around there regarding that. Like, if the ball's lost, the guys try to hop on it extraordinarily quickly. But I think more so it's getting on the wings, putting in crosses. I think if there's one way to beat Inter Miami, it's getting on the wing and putting in crosses to their relatively short center back. So I think that's the one thing you should look out for, especially if the center back pairing is Noah Allen and Maxi Falcon, who are, again, great defenders, but maybe on the shorter side. But yeah, I think it'll be an end-to-end game, especially if when Messi doesn't play, Miami play a lot more. This sounds like I'm like anti-Messi, but no, like when Messi's on the field, you have a little bit more of an expansive style where you can go end to end and play a little bit quicker. I know with Messi on the field, yes, you can play that, but you don't want to, deplete his energy with him defending, which Mascherano knows. But when Messi's not in the field, you look at the game against Houston, they were able to, just go really quickly and maybe not as sharp as they usually were, but they were just able to run the channels as much as they could. But yeah, if Messi doesn't play, I expect the same thing against the Union, where it'll be end to end, crossing everywhere. Miami will try to press and try to contain that the opposition attack, and I think it'll be an exciting game. And with Miami having 2 weeks off, let's see if they're rusty, but yeah, I think it'll be a great game.
Absolutely. So listen, we've had a great show so far. I know we didn't want to run too long today, and I appreciate you taking time to speak with us because I know your schedule right now is busier than ever. So I'll just kind of Jose or Dave, if you have any final questions, I'll shoot to you guys, and then we can kind of let Alex plug her work and kind of tell everybody where they can find her.
No further questions for me. Alex, you've passed the test. I'm excited to see how this game goes, and honestly, I'm covering that game for MLSsoccer.com, so I'm just a bystander on that one, just because you don't know how awkward it's going to be in a way to have to write a MLS-centric article on Miami should they win, and that's the article that they want. So that's going to be a new one for me.
Absolutely. How about yourself, Dave? Any final thoughts here?
No, I think Alex has covered all bases really well. So I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday night. Should be hopefully, Union come out on top, but it'd also be nice to perhaps see how this team can fare against some of Miami's stars if they do opt to go with a stronger lineup, despite their big game on Wednesday night.
Absolutely. Alex, so I'll let you take the floor here. Again, if you want to remind everybody where they can find your work, if you have any upcoming pieces that we can look out for, please just take it away and plug your things.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter X at AAW_1998. All of my work is there. Besides my usual Inter Miami stuff, I will have some NYCFC coverage. They're playing Atlanta, so that should be an interesting matchup for them. I'll have some quotes from Pascal Janssen. I think Thiago Martins is going to be the player at the availability. So if you're interested in that, you can read that too. Help me with my get some clicks for my internship. Yeah, that's pretty much where all my work is on Twitter and X, and my Substack, The Heron's Nest.
Awesome. I appreciate it again. I don't know exactly when the Union play Miami later on this season. I'm sure not for a few months. So we'll try to have you back on the show again, see how these teams have evolved over the whatever that time frame is. But until then, everybody who's listening, we will have our post game show on Saturday night at around the game's at 7:30, probably around 9:45, 10 o'clock. So for those who've been tuning in every single week, feel free to join us for a live post game show as well. As always, I am Mike Barrera, Jose Nunez, and Dave Miller for Across the Pitch at AAT Sports Team, and Alex Windley again. Thank you so much, Alex. I always appreciate you joining us, and everybody have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.